Welcome back. We are doing a video today on the Honda Acty of installing a replacement oxygen sensor. This one is from kei-fab.com. I'm doing a Bosch sensor, but after doing this video, they have released a Delphi version. So let's get into it. So here's the tools that you're going to need. We're going to start with the sensor that comes. This is a Bosch sensor. The newer one is a Delphi, but it comes with a pre-crimped on end, and this is a heat shrink end. Next up, we have some side cuts, but these are mainly crimpers. The brand doesn't matter, but you need a crimper. This is a pair of wire strippers. It is Pittsburgh, so it is from Harbor Freight. Flex head 3/8 ratchet is what I'm using. You don't have to have the flex head, but it definitely makes it easier. You will need a small flathead screwdriver, anything will work, and then an oxygen sensor removal tool. This is called an offset oxygen sensor tool, and it's 3/8 drive. This one is like kind of a standard one. It's also 3/8 drive. Two different versions. I prefer the offset style, this one here. Next up, you're going to need something to melt the heat shrink. So I'm using a lighter. You can also use a heat gun. This tubing, once you heat shrink it, has a glue in it, and that glue is important because it waterproofs that connection since the wiring is outside of the engine or outside the cab. Alright, so I'm doing this on a lift. You don't have to use a lift, but it makes it easier, especially recording. You're going to need to access the oxygen sensor, and it's right here. This is the connector. It's that blue connector, and we are going to unplug that first. So what you're going to do is reach up in there, and you have to basically do this in two parts. You undo the gray connector first. There's a little tab. You push it, and you're going to push the connector basically away from the camera. It unplugs, and then the blue connector has a tab right by the wire. You're going to push that and then pull it towards you. Now the sensor's unplugged. Right there where my finger is a black like ring holder. You're going to use the flat screwdriver to pop that open and pull the wire out. Next up, we're going to take the oxygen sensor socket. I'm using the offset one, and what we're going to do is slip it over the wire and slide it down onto the sensor itself. There is enough room to be able to get this on there, and yeah, just go ahead and slide it down on top. Once it's fully down, we're going to take our 3/8 ratchet. If you happen to buy one that's like a 1/2 inch, obviously use a 1/2 inch. But we're going to put our ratchet on there, and this is where the flex head kind of helps with the angle. I am doing this one-handed while trying to hold the camera, so sorry if it's not the best, but we're going to bust this loose. And now once it's loose, usually what I do is I pop my ratchet off, and then you can usually use the offset socket as like a little handle and turn it by hand the rest of the way. But this sensor was actually kind of stuck. I wasn't able to really move it by hand. This is normally like on a regular car I work on. I undo it by hand like this. It didn't want to move, so I had to put my ratchet back on it. Alright, we got it loose. Now you can undo it by hand and pull it out. And there is the old sensor. Now we're going to prep it for the new one. So this is the new sensor next to the old sensor. The sensor here is a Bosch. It's way thicker. The Delphi is thinner, so it makes things easier. What we're going to do is cut the wire. I'm giving it a little extra length, but you just need to cut it about the same length. I'm just setting the sensors next to each other and then cutting it. You can see I cut the wire here. I just used the Harbor Freight strippers, and then I'm going to use the Harbor Freight strippers to strip the wire. It got the wire stripped. Now I have the end ready. So you can see I actually swapped over to a red line connector fitting. You won't have to do that. The Delphi comes with that. So you should be good to go. So we're going to crimp it. Use your crimpers of choice. And then go ahead and crimp the connector. So basically what we're doing is just putting the factory pigtail connector on the new sensor. I am using a lighter be careful, obviously, with heat sources. Don't burn yourself. But you need to heat this up and get it actually pretty hot. So not only is this a heat shrink, but it's got a glue inside of it. So the shrink, obviously shrinks down, and then the glue inside melts to really waterproof this connector or this connection. So I'm just going to kind of rotate it around. You can use a heat gun. I just didn't have my heat gun with me at work, but I did have this lighter. So if you hold the lighter on it too long, you'll catch the plastic on fire. So be careful of that. But you're just going to kind of rotate it around and heat shrink it. It's kind of self-explanatory when you see it. You'll see it shrink down, and you'll kind of see it go clear. That's when you know you're good to go. And I'm going to try to get a zoom in on this. With this zoomed in, I try to slow the video down. You can see at the end of the heat shrink, there's a little clear blob. That is the glue. And also, the heat shrink fills in where you crimp. So I like using it's quote, non-insulated crimpers because it really gives a good solid connection, and then when you heat shrink it, it kind of fills in if you damage that outer layer. So this heat shrink's actually really, really nice. Alright, now we're going to pop off the shipping cap off the end, and the O2 sensor comes with anti-seize pre-installed, so you don't need to buy any or apply any. Now back on the vehicle, we're going to hand thread the sensor in, and like I said, this is the Bosch version, so the sensor housing is a little too thick. It threads in, but it's really hard to get an O2 sensor socket on it. So the original version of this, you have to unbolt the heat shield, and then with kei-fab, they changed to a Delphi that is skinnier, so you don't have to take the heat shield off. And the reasoning behind that, the Bosch sensor worked great, but these bolts may or may not come off easy for somebody. So to avoid, breaking these bolts if they're rusted in the manifold and then you having to deal with that, the switch to Delphi was made so you don't have to take the heat shield off. But we're going to go ahead and get the sensor snugged up and then plug it back in. So here we're going to plug the sensor onto its bracket first. So you're going to take the blue end and push it away from the camera towards the engine and plug it in. I'm also plugging the wire back in its little holder here. But we're going to plug the connector onto its holder and then plug the body or engine side harness, which is the gray connector, into the O2 sensor. And then we are officially done. I just want to thank you guys for watching this video. I will put the links to the tools I use and the O2 sensor in the description. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment. Hopefully this was helpful for you to replace your oxygen sensor on your mini truck. Please hit the like button or subscribe if you're not. I would appreciate it. Thanks guys, and I'll see you on the next one.